Welcome back, rankers. Well, it's been a very slow week when it comes to SEO stories, apart from the massive one last week where Google made a huge security blunder with its Google Webmaster Tools and left data open to a lot of sites, to a lot of people who probably shouldn't have been seeing it, but that's another story. So what I did, I said, who out there wants a SEO review on their site? And Ram City Memory came back and said, hey, we'd like one. We saw you speak at the Professional eBay Sellers Alliance last year, and we'd like to know what you think of our site. So if you haven't been to the Professional eBay Sellers Alliance conference, Google it. Go there next year. It's a great conference if you're doing anything to do with e-commerce. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and have a look at the Google Index, because this gives you an idea of the things that Google is currently seeing about your site. So this is even before I go and do keyword research. So www.ramcity.com.au. Oh, now, for our New Zealand viewers, this is about memory for computers. It's nothing to do with sheep, so don't get excited. I can say that because I've got New Zealand ancestry. Anyway, Ram City. So here we are. What we can see here is a lot of description tags that are very, very similar. If you go into Webmaster Tools and look under Optimization, under HTML Suggestions, you will probably see a bunch of pages on your site where Google's saying you probably should change your description tag. The other thing here that I'm seeing straight away is your title tags are very broad. I would put a little bit more about the information that you're actually selling under these brands, whether it be the RAM, whether it be solid state hard drives, whatever it might be. So that's that. So then I'll go and have a look at how does Google, one of the things you may have noticed here, 226,000 results. I did say a rude word when I saw that number because I went, that's a massive site. As it turns out, the site's not that big. It is, I've got this browser results set here to 100 results, and you can see here it only goes up to page 7. So we know there's probably less than 700 pages actually in the index, even though Google's telling us there was 226,000. That's because there's a time lag. Google will go and find pages and find them, and then it will say, oh, that one doesn't exist anymore, it's broken, or maybe I really shouldn't be looking at that. It could be looking at a different version of the same page. So a couple of things you need to do if you're seeing this sort of result in Google. You need to have a look at canonicals. Maybe the site is being crawled in a way where Google is seeing different versions of the site because the page has been sorted different ways. So if you look in Google Webmaster Tools under configuration, and then have a look at URL parameters, and you can configure things there. You might want to get your webmaster to do that because it can be a bit tricky and you don't want to do the wrong thing. The other reason that you might see this many pages is that in a site that deals with technology, where products are changing all the time, upgrades are coming out, other things are being discontinued, you may not be getting rid of the old pages in a delicate manner, if you like. You might just be deleting them. What you should be doing is actually 301ing them to the new equivalent page. So that way Google knows, well, that page doesn't exist anymore. Here's the new version of that particular product that I should be looking at. And that way you won't get that result. What that can actually mean is that Google might see a lot of pages that are broken and it doesn't want to send its users to that site. As it happens, this site ranks really well for RAM and RAM upgrades, which, as it happens, are really good keywords for this site to rank for. Where it may not be ranking well for very specific long tail searches, where you talk about, say, MacBook Pro RAM upgrade DDR2 blah 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 blah. Now those are important searches because the user is putting more information about exactly the product that they're after or that they're looking for. So they're further along in their decision-making process as opposed to someone who's just typing in RAM. It's the difference between a digital camera or Canon SLR 60D with macro 100mm blah blah blah, right? So they're more specific, so they're more likely to be further along in the buying process. So we can see there's a couple of issues there. The next thing I'm going to go and have a look at is the cached version of that site. So I'll just go back to the front page. And the reason why you want to have a look at this is it tells you something about the way that Google is seeing your pages, okay? So what I'm really interested in, though, is not just this version of the page. What I'm really interested in is the text-only version, because that's how the Googlebot really sees it. Remember, it doesn't look at graphics and those sorts of things. It looks at the information around those graphics. So we can see here, this is pretty good. It's got a lot of information about the products you're trying to rank for, like RAM and solid-state hard drives, because you can see right here that it's got a lot of resources about different types of RAM, different brands. I would probably put in here, if we're shopping by brands, I would probably put Acer RAM, Apple RAM, Asus RAM, all those sorts of different things. Same here with the solid state hard drives and those sorts of things. Just give a little bit more information. It's going to help the user, and it's going to help the Googlebot understand what the site's about. You'll see here also, right down the bottom of the page, we've got this great big heading down here. So that tells me something is probably a bit skew-if with the way that you're using your heading tags. So that's when I go across to Firefox, and I'm using a tool here from a guy called Aaron Wall, who has a tool called SEO for Firefox, and it's got this great little thing called SEO X-Ray. You click on that, and we can see here it shows me immediately where all the heading tags are. And I can see I've started the page up here with a H2, a H2, a H4, 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 H4. And here's that phrase we're looking at down the bottom here, and it's a H1. If you're going to use heading tags, it's a good idea to use them in the order that is logical. H1, H2, H3, H4. Okay. We made some changes recently on a site that was in a highly competitive space, and we changed these simple things. They went from number 8 to number 1 and 2 for their keywords simply by changing those things. Now, when you're in a really competitive space, it's about getting all of these things right, not just one. If the competition isn't that strong, you only have to get a few of them right. But when you're up against a lot of other sites who are doing things right, you have to go that one better, okay? So what you're looking at, what I would do here is I would lose the H2 on this altogether, okay? It serves no purpose. I'd also lose the H2 here. I would just format them without using the heading tags. And I would probably make this a H1, RAM City Upgrade Finder, because I've got the word RAM in there and I've got the word upgrade in there, okay? And that's a H1, and it's the most important thing on the page to the user when they hit that site. So it's going to work for the user, and it's going to work for the Googlebot, okay? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it logical for the Googlebot. The other thing you want to go and check is crawl errors under Site Health in Google Webmaster Tools, because you're probably going to have a lot of crawl errors. You want to fix those crawl errors. If the pages no longer exist, as I said before, 301 them, permanently redirect them to their equivalent new pages. The other thing that you should be looking at, of course, is checking your competition, seeing what they're doing, seeing how fast their sites are. One of the things that you can do is go to a site called webpagetest.org, and there's plenty of these sorts of sites around, and you put in your URL. What I can see here is that your page load time is 17 seconds. Now, some of you may remember a few weeks back I did a quick one on ours, and I found that our page load time was 24 seconds, which is insanely slow, right? So we went and fixed a few things, and we got it right back up to 3 seconds. And one of the tools I use, if you're on a Mac, is a thing called Curl. And if I do our site right now, I can see that our time to first byte is 81 seconds. On your site, if we go back and have a look at web page test, we can see here we've got an F for the time to first byte. So that's the time it takes for Google to do the DNS negotiation, or any browser really, to do the DNS negotiation, to request the information from the web server, and to the amount of time it takes to get that first byte. Yours, according to this test, is up at 3.5 seconds, which is pretty slow. So ours is at 81 milliseconds, I should say. And you can see here the page is 132K. When I have a look at yours, it's saying it's over 1 second, and I've had to download 20,000 bytes. So that's a lot of stuff to download. So you might want not only have a look at how much information that we're downloading to get that first page, or the big graphics, those sorts of things, but also the way that the page has been rendered and served. Now, one of the things that we found that works really well to speed up a site is a thing called fast CGI. Now, I don't know what sort of server you're on. I haven't checked any of that. But speak to your web hosting company and ask them if they can implement fast CGI. In our own site, I found that it sped up things by a factor of 10. So you've got everything else right here. You know, you've got all A's across the top here. You're compressing images. You're not on a content distribution network, but that's not a big deal unless you're expecting a really, really large volume of traffic. If you are, then you might want to use, say, Amazon or Edgecast or any of those other distribution networks out there, which will just serve the site closer to the user so that the user gets it quicker. But this is the one that you really need to work on straight away, and I think it is that front page. So they're the main things that I would look at. If we go and have a quick look at Google Trends and we type in, and this is for your keyword research. So I've done all of that right before I do any keyword research. And we have a look at RAM. We can see here we've got a lot of mixed up related terms, but I'm guessing you're mainly interested in Australia. So you're going to have a look at Australia. And you can see here the other related terms, RAM memory, which is people typing in random access memory, ATM machine. Computer RAM, laptop RAM, what is RAM, Mac RAM, and then you start to get to some of these really longer tail searches, which have lower volume, but are more important to you and your audience. And you can see here the word RAM has decreased over time, and that's probably because people are getting more sophisticated about their search. So they're the main things I would look at, and I haven't even looked at your SSD keywords, but one of the things that I did note was that your page title, I have some questions about. And the page title is the first thing that Google sees about your site. So up here, we've got that this page, well, I'll get to the canonical in a moment, but right here we've got the description, we've got the title down here, we've got keywords. I wouldn't worry too much about the keywords meta tag these days. You've left it empty, that's fine. I would put this page title above these two, because it's the first thing that Google sees. And I would also have a look at this phrase here, memory and SSD upgrades for Dell. Now, if that's an important phrase for you, great. But I'm guessing that people search for memory upgrades for Dell or SSD upgrades for Dell, not the one phrase. So I would split that out if you're primarily targeting Dell users, if they're the biggest audience that you have. These little brand phrases on the end here aren't really helping terribly much at all. And you know, by the looks of the menu structure you've got and the internal pages that you have, you're kind of covering that anyway. I would leave these until you get to the specific pages about a specific piece of hardware where you can use those brands. Hopefully that makes sense. The canonical tag that you've got here on your home page it's not hurting you here, but if you've got this elsewhere in your site, and I'll just check, a canonical is basically saying, look, the real version of this page is at this address. Well, you're telling Google that it's the same page, so it's not really doing anything there. But if we go into, say, this, we'll go into DDR3, and it can be useful if you're searching and categorizing things all by different avenues. So that's where you would use it. If you've got one page that is available at several different URLs, you would use the canonical tag to say the original version of this page is at this address, and which you've got here, which is good. So I don't know if that's the exact same page. It is the exact same page. So it's not really doing anything for you there. Where you use the canonical is where you might sort that page a bit differently, or you might be a category page, or it renders differently for the user for a good reason. And the reason that you use the canonical tag is so you don't have a bunch of duplicates. But the main things for you would be looking at that index. Why have you got 226,000 pages? Chances are it's old content that hasn't been 301, it's just been 404. So Google doesn't know that those pages shouldn't be there. It could be the URL parameters. Remember to check under configuration and URL parameters. Might want to get your webmaster to do that. And then look at the heading tags on the page and the way that you're using page titles, and then also your description tags. Hopefully that's helpful. Sorry to New Zealand viewers, I couldn't help myself. But this is a true story. The last time I was leaving New Zealand, the story of the day on the news was about a man had just been arrested for doing something inappropriate to a sheep. I kid you not. And we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye.